In this year of 2025, from our perspective, you are at this threshold. You are getting ready to move to that next level. And in order to do this, you must truly engage in your own power to choose what will be your reality, what will be your truth. Many will say that 2025 is exciting. Others will say that it is limiting and have a negative outlook of perhaps destruction and fear. Look to your own emotional responses when you encounter this information. Does it resonate with you? Some of the other things that we are peering into at the moment that we can reflect on and deliver is that there will be levels of bringing up disclosure of certain issues. Certain events will play out, and as you allow yourself to disclose your true being of who you are to the world that is reflected back to you, you will have greater levels of disclosure from that reflection and all the participants in the reflection. Additionally, as you move towards more contact with yourself, your positive and negative holistic states of your entire being, you will have greater levels of contact reflected in that external reflection.
Greetings and good day. This is The Channeled Truth. I'm your host, Thomas Leihart, and I'm a channeler myself, and I love exploring the works of Seth and Jane Roberts, Abraham Hicks, and Bashar. And with me today, we have a very special guest, and we have today a very special episode because we're at episode 33. And synchronistically enough, we have a new guest that is going to bring through us a member of the Sassani civilization. So without further ado, let's bring Chris onto our digital stage. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So we're going to get right into the channeling state. I understand you channel a being that you have come to know as Ajax. And
Yes.
There's a backstory behind that we can get into after the channeling, but let's get right into it.
Okay. So for me, it just takes me a little bit to get in there, so I'll see you a bit later.
See you on the other side.
Indeed. Greetings, salutations, and good day. We are so pleased that we could co-create this particular interaction with you. Before we get started, there are a few things we would like to say, if that is all right.
Indeed. Take it away.
Yes. We find it of some amusement that the synchronicity of the number 3 is so present in this particular interaction. For, as we have said before to others, we have something of a thing for threes. On this particular date, the date is 1/11, the 3, in the year of 2025, 9 3 threes internally. So 3333. You have mentioned earlier that this is also a 33rd episode. We do enjoy threes so much. We also find it of great delight that we are on a show called The Channeled Truth. For in this particular venue, this particular platform, truths are spoken not only by those who say that they are channeling other beings, but also by those who are channeling themselves, channeling their own truths, their own perspectives for you to consider, much like that of a buffet. Take a little sampling here and a little sampling there. In the year of 2025, this 329 synchronicity, you will see that there are many perspectives for you to evaluate from, many truths for you to have this consideration. 9 as a symbolical number is something of a limit, a threshold to another level. So in this year of 2025, from our perspective, you are at this threshold. You are getting ready to move to that next level. And in order to do this, you must truly engage in your own power to choose what will be your reality, what will be your truth. You can have all these perspectives providing you with opportunities to choose from, but you must ultimately decide what it will be for you and act in the knowing that it is true for you. One of the other things that we have delivered is the idea of an emotional guidance system that you can use as something of a litmus test to check where you are in vibrational alignment, both to your core being and the perspective of the experiences that you are having. Many will say that 2025 is exciting. Others will say that it is limiting and have a negative outlook of perhaps destruction and fear. Look to your own emotional responses when you encounter this information. Does it resonate with you? As we mentioned, it is symbolically at that number 9, that threshold. And sometimes thresholds can be scary to move to that next level. However, some are interpreting this as destructive and negative events, but it is simply that matter of perspective that you can bring into alignment with yourself. And lastly, before we conclude this short introduction, we would like to express that consider belief systems as you might to the analogy of a mechanical system. As you have certain beliefs and hold them in regard, your energy flows through those belief filters into that system and manifests the reality that you experience. If you are out of alignment with your core being, much like a mechanical system, you will experience friction and loss of energy as it is dissipated into heat, dissipated into disservice from a certain perspective. So bring those beliefs into your conscious awareness. Allow them to move from disservice into service to you, and add their energy not in a constraining and out of alignment way, but into that mechanical system to allow you to propel more fully into yourself. We will pause here for further interactions.
Awesome. Thanks again for showing up, for being on the show, and for delivering those, that kind of information. I feel like it's very foundational. And oftentimes we look for the bells and whistles, but coming down to the core is something I'm very passionate about, transforming, the negative beliefs and letting them go and moving to higher levels.
It is something that we are also passionate about as well.
I feel like it all comes down to this, right? Doing that work or doing the play, right? As we might say. Thinking of our viewers out there, though, I know there's a question in the air. I feel it. And it's this question of open contact and wondering if you have any particular things to extrapolate or expand on with regards to open contact in the very near future.
Well, we can say a few things, sure. Open contact is reflective of the reality which you are experiencing. Some have already had open contact in their experiences. There are divergences in the mass consensus, just as we have delivered earlier that your beliefs are driving that manifestation of your reality. You, as an individual and as a collective, have agreed to be part of a mass consensus of somewhat shared experiences. However, you are still your own universe. So, some have already had contact to the level that is sufficient and relevant for them in their own exploration. Open contact on a larger societal mass consensus level is not something that we can pinpoint and say it will occur on this date exactly, because the energy is always flowing. One of the greatest principles of this reality existence is that you have free will. You can listen to information and make a different decision. Any predictions, thusly, have served in the sense of allowing you to make a more informed decision about where you would prefer to have that energy to flow. Open contact at this point is inevitable for many who will view this information. The question is when, and that is driven by you, your readiness to experience it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I kind of had a feeling the answer would be something like this, but it is a common question, so it's good to get that one out there. Another one that I feel, since you are going to be quite a bit new to a lot of the viewers here, can you say a little bit about your place within the Sassani civilization, perhaps the timeline, and so on?
Yes, we can. So, we have adapted and adopted the name Ajax as a moniker for you to refer to us as, although we do not actually have this name. It is something that you can use to relate to us. From a linear perspective, we exist in a space of time that is before the one that you would know as Bashar, but slightly overlapping when Bashar exists. The Sassani civilization, as we have delivered in other places, is more of a multi-dimensional civilization. We can interact with individuals in other frequencies, other realities, as it is germane and relevant to us. So our particular reality is, we will say, juxtaposed to that of Bashar's, very similar in alignment, but not exactly the same. We function as both a teacher in our society to others and other civilizations, and it is our passion. We also are an explorer and enjoy exploring the realms of what you would call time and space and consciousness.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I love hearing those description of the multidimensionality. That's like I can feel or see in my mind's eye a kind of crystalline sphere with many lines intersecting and many overlapping spheres within the sphere, and interconnections being made across time and space. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful visualization.
And that particular visualization is quite apt because it is your interpretation of the multidimensional existence that you are perceiving.
Indeed, especially the word juxtaposed, I can sense like there's these layers that you're moving through, whereas we work with one layer and you work with many, many layers, and you can kind of cross connect that way. It's hard to put into words, but it's a beautiful visualization.
Indeed. And think back to the earlier synchronicities that we have mentioned with the threes. You and others, for so much of your experience and incarnational time in this plane, have been in third density. The threes are symbolic of balance. And when you add the one to the three dimensional experience that you are having, you get four, symbolic of transformation. You are transforming.
I also see the three as a triangle and the fourth point above the triangle to create a tetrahedron.
Indeed.
I love playing with numbers and sacred geometry. It helps me to grok the tangibleness of existence, if that makes any sense.
Quite so. Play with it as you will, for that play, that depth of exploration will help you to better grasp and understand some of these more intangible things. Oftentimes, people will think of things such as imagination and be quick to dismiss its impressions that are delivered. Yet the imagination, as we have said before, is something that can help ground and allow you to peer into counterpart realities, counterpart experiences, and in channeling your imagination through your belief systems, you can latch on to that particular frequency, that particular energy, and channel it through.
Yes, I feel like this happens much more than we give credit for, that we have bleed throughs from these other realities and other selves all the time, and even future selves and sometimes past selves, right? And that we are just becoming aware of that instead of being in solution. It's like we're starting to see this particular flavor. Oh, this is related to that civilization or that counterpart or this other life and so on.
That's what it's all about in this current now.
It makes reality just feel so richly dense. I don't mean dense in a negative way, but richly complex. I'm not finding the right words, but it adds a kind of depth perception to the everyday life.
Yes, it's like as if you were, well, we will use the metaphor of playing a game because we do so enjoy them. Playing a game and discovering that just because you have followed one particular set of rules for all your life in playing this game, suddenly you might have some inspiration that allows you to think of new rule sets that you can play, a new way to interact with the system and have a great deal more fun with it.
It's so interesting you say that and so timely because I literally feel like this year for me is about stepping out of an old set of rules and really adopting a new set of rules. So it's really on point. Thank you.
Quite so. Choose that reality, if you so please.
And so another question that comes to me, I know you touched upon 2025 and in our civilization, we're experiencing that crossover through the new year. We had the solstice. Now we had the Gregorian New Year. We're going to have Chinese New Year. It's a lot of time of beginnings. So is there anything else you can say about this particular year of 2025 that people can, use in their daily lives?
Well, we have already delivered that it is a time for you to choose, and this we feel is the more prominent issue that is so apt for this particular time frame. Some of the other things that we are peering into at the moment that we can reflect on and deliver is that there will be levels of bringing up disclosure of certain issues. Certain events will play out, and as you allow yourself to disclose your true being of who you are to the world that is reflected back to you, you will have greater levels of disclosure from that reflection and all the participants in the reflection. Additionally, as you move towards more contact with yourself, your positive and negative holistic states of your entire being, you will have greater levels of contact reflected in that external reflection.
Beautifully put. I wholeheartedly resonate with that, just fully. I mean, that is how I see contact. And you put it beautifully, that self-disclosure, right? It's like everyone's looking for disclosure out there or contact out there. And I always tell people, well, it's all about contacting more of yourself. But I love that idea of disclosure, like it's disclose more of yourself to the world, share more of yourself with the world, and also disclose, the negativities and the negative beliefs so that we can transform those too, right? It's just the age of avoidance is over, and it's a beautiful thing.
Exactly. And it always starts and continues to move with you and those actions that you play out.
Indeed. I think either getting channeling brain or fresh out of questions. So is there anything else you want to add to our discussion?
At this time, we feel this delivery of information is sufficient. We will thank you for tuning your channel to the Ajax channel. And if we have been in resonance with you, we are pleased to be of service to you. If we have not been in resonance with you, we are pleased to be of service to you in allowing you to more fully discern what you prefer.
Indeed. Thank you. I'd love to have you on the show again. And yeah, Aveo.
In perfect timing, we will be there when it can be of service. We are in service to you all. Aveo.
Thank you. And welcome back, Chris.
Hi there. Thanks.
That was nice. Short and sweet, man.
Yeah. Ajax doesn't like to have prolonged conversations if he can get the point across pretty quickly.
Yeah, and
Something.
I think that's great. As a first time, it was just like a nice burst of energy. I really feel the change, the energetic shift. And that's just rich. I don't have any other words for it. It's just thickly rich.
Yeah, I know in my own experience, it leaves me with just such a sense of euphoria right immediately afterwards. It's like still floating on the cloud there and starting to settle back into the focus of who I am.
Hmm. Yeah, so the obligatory question that you asked me the other night, right? How does
Sure.
it
Yeah.
feel when you're channeling Ajax?
So so for me, I am mostly conscious. I've sometimes described it before as semi-conscious because it's like standing in a room for me with a bunch of other people. So Ajax and whoever he's talking to are having the conversation through me, um, but I just really do feel like he's putting the thoughts there, and I'm just speaking the thoughts out, right? And sometimes my ego will try to enter into the picture and be like, hey, what about this? And Ajax is just like, nope, not talking about that. Or occasionally he'll amuse the ego and bring up something to discuss about it. But yeah, I feel like a co-participant that's in the room in the conversation when it happens.
That's a great analogy because I can see it in my mind's eye. And I think Daryl Anka described it once as like being the passenger in the car, like seeing the
Yeah,
scenery, but Bashar's doing the driving kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. Very, very similar.
I'm super curious. Do you have like dream encounters or do you visually see craft in your mind's eye or perhaps even physically or any other?
So
Yeah.
my, for whatever reason, my most of the time my dreams I don't remember. And I've followed some passions to like do some more lucid dreaming type stuff, and it's worked here and there. And occasionally, I'll get a dream, and I'm just like, yeah, that was really important to help me think through something. But for the most part, I I feel like stuff is going on there, and I just don't recall it. So it's a curiosity of mine, like what the heck's going on?
Very interesting curiosity.
Yeah.
And like throughout the day, do you feel like what opened this Pandora's box of, hey, I'm channeling Sassani being, it's not an everyday thing. So how did that manifest?
You want the short story or the long story? Because
10,
I could
20
go either
minutes,
direction.
10, 15 minutes, something like that.
Okay. So up until about the year 2023, I was not into any of this stuff. I was not into channeled information. I was not into a whole lot of personal development sorts of things. Like here and there, like some psychology stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. I remember doing Myers Briggs type stuff and thinking, oh man, people have to be this way. They have to be fitted into this box, and that's exactly how you classify a person. Well, the surprise it is nowadays to realize that's not the case, right? In 2023, I heard about the David Grush stuff with,
Mm,
hey, there's stuff going on, and
right.
that sort of piqued my curiosity and started to get me to awaken a little bit to, all right, what's going on here? Because it seemed like such a that just doesn't come out, and people risk their careers and that sort of thing. So I followed that pathway, and that led me to channeled information eventually. And Bashar was one of those pieces of channeled information that I came into contact and eventually very deep resonance with. And I just loved all of those principles. And it has been so life transforming for me. And just like, I want to do this. Like, channeling's so cool. I want to channel. And it was blocked. Couldn't do it. I tried channeling. I was trying to force it, of course, and nothing would come through. Wouldn't work for me. So eventually, I was just like, okay, well, following the formula, right? This is not my path right now, so I'm going to go somewhere else. So eventually, I came into another channeling group that I'm part of now, which you have uh, also done an episode with us on in the forum. And the entity Zariah told me, hey, by the way, you're a channel. Just kind of stated it just matter of factly, and I was like, okay, well that's really cool. I maybe this is green light synchronicity. This is opening up for me. So I started exploring that a little bit more, and all sorts of information about how to start channeling just started flowing to me in both like videos online and books that would show up and get recommended to me, and different people I would interact with would have the pieces that would help me string it together. So I did some automatic writing. I did some vocal recordings just by myself. And the thing that really strongly brought it through for me was practicing with my wife just on weeknights. But something about that vocal channeling with another person really
Yes.
connected and brought through the information. And one day, Ajax popped in, and I've been flowing with it ever since.
Nice. Yeah, for me that was the critical threshold was getting a really good trusted friend to ask me questions and just rinse repeat and just keep doing
Yep.
it. And at first it kind of came out a little, dry and kind of tense and oh, this sounds like Seth kind of stuff. I mean, as
Mhm.
if like, oh, I'm just repeating stuff I read in a book, but it started to get more. more dimensional and more lively. And it's like now there's like a live wire connection there. But you have to
Yeah,
kind of just prime the pump and just get someone to ask you questions, someone you trust that you can, disclose more of yourself to, right? And be
exactly.
vulnerable, right? And trust that like, hey, this person's not judging me, right? But they're curious too. They're also exploring. So yeah, for the viewers out there, right? If you're interested in channeling, like this is the way, right? Get a
And
person.
the other
Yeah,
thing I'd like to just add into that is a large part of the channeling journey is trust. So trusting that what you're getting is authentic. It's an authentic communication. Trusting that, okay, it doesn't matter if it sounds like the same information. You're still just developing that connection, and you move in as you go into these higher and higher levels of will you trust, will you trust, will you trust.
indeed. And to play on that a little bit, of course, if you love Bashar, of course, if you love Seth, you are drawn to it because you resonate with that particular material and the way it's delivered. Therefore, it's not a surprise if what you start channeling is going to have a very strong similarity to that, right? Because like
Yep.
attracts like, right? It's law of attraction. So think of it that way instead of like, oh, am I sounding too much like Abraham Hicks or, whoever your favorite channeler is, right?
Exactly. And just just let it flow, have that trust, and so what, right? So what? If it sounds like one thing, who cares? It's still you embarking on that path.
Another thing I noticed is when you're in the channeling state and you're uttering something and you're that person standing in the room, right, observing what's going on, to you, it seems like, oh, this is just common sense, right? Everybody knows this. It's because you're in that high frequency range where that is common sense. But then when you
Yep.
listen to the channeling later back from your physically focused self, it's like, oh man, this is good stuff, right? Because it's like at that level, it's not as obvious, right? And this is why we channel.
It's kind of like the reverse of. I mean, I'm not sure how many people have had this particular experience, but a lot of times when people are in other states, specifically with alcohol or whatever, they will say, "Oh, this is really good" while it's happening, right? And then
Oh
later
yeah,
they're like, "That's not so much." It's kind of like the reverse with channeling.
totally.
You're like, "Yeah, okay, that's sure, that's just how it is." And then afterwards, you're like, "Wow, that was really good. That's cool."
Right. And that can really play into the fears of the physical mind of like, yeah, this is just whatever. Like, I'm not really channeling. Right. So if you let those negative beliefs take a hold of it, it can really delay you. I mean, all timing is perfect, but it's just like, I know so many times I've started channeling and then I look, it's like, oh, this is just too much like Seth or it's too this or, and then it's like you slow yourself down instead of just getting on that surfboard and riding and just, do
Yep.
you hit the first wave? No. Do you hit the 10th wave? I mean, you're out there because you have passion and you just like, eventually you're on that board and you're riding and you're just like exhilarated, right?
Yep. And sometimes you can string yourself up in these like thoughts, right? Because one thought starts gravitating another thought, which gravitates more of the same. And so you're in this like local maxima of thoughts where you're just so densified in it you gotta jar yourself out and see it from a different perspective to be able to move to a different state.
Yeah, and since I started channeling again, I'm channeling for myself daily. Ever since I said yes to the forum that you and Ray run together, all of a sudden it's like, oh well, now time to do it, right? It's like gotta get back on the horse. And man,
Yep.
I can say that in that 2 weeks, since I said yes and I started channeling daily, it's like my life is just infused with this incredible energy that's helping me not get into these gravitational wells of thoughts of a dense nature, right? It's like it really helps to, like, I can kind of skirt above it and just not fall into the gravity well of all that.
Yep. Well, you had such a wonderful guest appearance on the forum. Definitely thank you for showing up and saying yes to that.
Yeah, and thank you. And we'll put some links in the video description of, if others want to find that as well.
Yeah, and if I could just say one thing about the that, if that's all right.
Of course.
So, at least in my experience, and this is the case for everyone that's there, but the forum is one of these places where if you're just starting out and you just want to start channeling and work with other people, but maybe people aren't available to you locally, or you don't have someone that you feel like you can trust, this is a fantastic group of people who are not going to be judgmental about what you're bringing through. They're just excited about the fact that people are there channeling and they're enjoying the interactions. So if that's something that sounds great to you, head on over. We'd love to have you.
Awesome. Just one last thing on the forum here is I did Toastmasters some time ago, and to me, this feels like this is the Toastmasters for channeling. So if you guys know what Toastmasters is, you'll totally get the reference.
Perfect. Quite an apt analogy there.
So before we close out, is there any morsel of goodies that you can reflect on your experience with Ajax and connecting to the Sassani civilization?
I think the biggest thing for me is I remember Ajax in the message a little bit earlier talking about like I don't remember all the words, but I definitely get the concepts. And I remember he was talking about the mechanical system
Mm-hmm.
and beliefs. And that's something that for me has been a very profound piece recently. Was I was working through, I was actively channeling, um, and I was at a certain level of it, but I still had some limiting beliefs. And yes, you can channel and still have limiting beliefs. But as I moved through those limiting beliefs, just like Ajax was saying, that energy just added into my excitement of doing the channeling. And like I can connect quicker to Ajax. I feel like I can bring him through a lot more strongly. There's less of this kind of back and forth play that we had before about what would be said. He's just more expressing through. So I think I would definitely foot stomp on those limiting beliefs as you work through them, add to your excitement in a very tangible and visceral way.
That's beautiful. And that's something Bashar said, kind of the same thing in a different way. And I'm remembering it, but I'm not remembering the words exactly. But something about how, you unlock that energy from the negative belief and you can it adds momentum to the energy of your excitement. It's something about how when you express your excitement, you bump into limitations and the negative beliefs. And then as you let them go, that energy adds momentum to the excitement, something like this. And it feels like it's a very similar thing to what you're saying. Very Sassanian, I might add.
Yes, yes. And I'm just saying I have lived that recently. It is so true. So very true. That's for me.
Indeed. So yeah, thank you so much for coming today. I definitely want to get you on here again. And, to all the viewers out there, may this inspire you to step into the unknown, to use 2025 to discern and choose wisely your path, because there are many paths and you are your own universe. So with that, we will wish each and every one of you a beautifully glorious and a fond good day.